I am excited to share a recipe on our weekend. What? And the recipe that I'm going to share is called cinnamon squares. And it actually comes from, it's like cinnamon buns, but it actually comes from the Magnolia Table Cookbook by Joanna Gaines. I have a bunch of materials here. I won't go through every one because this will be too long. What I'll do is I will flash up in a minute the recipe so that you can see all of the things that you need, and you'll have all of that information and the instructions, but we're gonna do this together. Is to put some hot water and a little bit of sugar and yeast. Yeast is like one of my favorite kitchen magic sciencey things. We're gonna put active yeast into this water, shake it all up. Oh my gosh, they're alive. I'm gonna just stir this up, make sure that all that yeast is activated. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna let it sit and let it get frothy. So take a look at it now, and in a minute I'll come back and you'll see how I just let it sit and how it gets frothy and grows. So I've been waiting and watching this grow. This is the kitchen science. Come take a look. It's doubled and it's frothy, and this was just the hot water, yeast, and a little bit of sugar, and it's very smelly too. So now to this, we're gonna make our dough. We are going to add sugar, 2 cups of sugar, putting it in there. I measured this all out ahead of time, like a real cooking show. 1 1/4 cups of milk, but this has been warmed up. And I'm gonna pour it right over the sugar so it kind of melts it a little bit. We're doing low budget production here right now, folks. Low budget cooking show. Butter, 1 stick of butter melted in the microwave. Putting that in. And then we have 2 eggs that I cracked and beat just like with my fork in here. I'm gonna put those 2 eggs in. And I'm gonna mix that together before I put in my flour. So I'll put that off to the side and take a look. Just watch as this comes together and it's all frothy. And the sugar's gonna be in there, and I'm just gonna give a little stir. Stir, stir, stir. Awesome. Okay, now I'm gonna slowly add in the flour. 6 cups of flour. Now, most of you know that I am gluten-free because I have an allergy. And so when you offer me treats in the hallway and I'm like, I'm so sorry, I can't have it. I'm not being rude. I just can't have it. So this recipe is being made with regular flour so that the rest of my family can enjoy it right now. But last night when I was testing the recipe out, I made it with gluten-free flour. Let me tell you what they all did this morning. Every single person, including my mother, had a cinnamon square with breakfast, and they loved it, even though it was gluten-free, so they probably couldn't tell. Now this dough is gonna come together. You're gonna give me a minute. I'm just gonna keep twirling it and mixing it and coming together. You know, people think you have to measure precisely with baking, and the answer, that's false. You don't have to. You have to go by feel and look. And if you look at this and it's too wet, you're gonna need to add some more flour. But I'm gonna work on this and come back in just a minute. All right, so that dough took a little bit of working. It's not pretty, but I'm gonna show it to you now. I actually ended up having to add about another 1.5 cups of flour to make sure that it wasn't too gooey. I'm gonna be careful not touching it. You're gonna take some softened butter, just some like whatever, table butter. This is gonna be fun. I'm gonna just pinch some of this off, and I'm gonna just slide it and rub it on the top, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna let this dough sit for about an hour, and it's gonna rise even more because of the yeast that's in it. But when it does, you wanna make sure that it's got this butter on top so that it doesn't stick to the sides. So I'm gonna make sure that I also take the butter and put it on the sides of my pan or my bowl here, because as it grows, you don't want it to stick. You'll miss some of it. That's just how it goes, but you'll do that. Now, the next step of this is that I'm going to cover this with, you're supposed to cover it and put it in a warm spot. And my house is a little chilly today. I don't really have a warm spot, so here's my tip. What I do is I preheat my oven and then I turn it off right away. I open up the oven and I let it kind of cool off a little bit, but it still becomes like a nice little warm spot. So I've already done that and the oven is off. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna cover it with a tea towel. If you don't have a tea towel or a towel like this, and it doesn't matter that it gets yucky with the butter on my fingers, I'm gonna cover this. I made it a little bit wet, a little damp, and I'm gonna cover this. If you don't have that, you can do plastic wrap, but make sure you butter the plastic wrap because if it rises, depending on the size of your bowl, it might stick to the plastic wrap, okay? So now that my little thing is covered here, I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna put it in the oven. Again, the oven's not on, it's just a warm space, and let it sit there for 1 hour and I will be back. All right, while that dough is rising in the warm place and covered, we're gonna go ahead and make the filling. Now, this does have pecans in it. If you do not like pecans, leave them out. You don't have to use them. You could just do cinnamon or butter. If you're allergic to nuts, do not put nuts in your recipe. Anyways, these packages that I got, they have about 1.5 cups, and this is the filling. I'm gonna say this is a 2-2-2-2 filling. So you want 2 cups of halved pecans. So I'm gonna put about another half of this in because I already put 1 whole bag in. Put this off to the side. I'm going to take 2 sticks of butter. Here's the thing I want to do. It's still a little cold, but I'm going to cut it up and just put them in. This is into my food processor. I've had this food processor for 20 years. It's an oldie but a goodie. Keep going with chopping this up. You might have to go back in and chop up some of the clumps again while it's in there because the ideal thing that we want to make is like this cinnamon sugary paste, which we're going to layer into these cinnamon squares. So really good. So that's that. And then I have brown sugar. Don't freak out, everyone, but yes, I'm going to have 2 cups of brown sugar. This does make a lot of cinnamon squares. Packed brown sugar. I keep my brown sugar in the refrigerator. I don't know why. It's one of those things that like your mom tells you to do, so you do it. It doesn't get as clumped then. Okay, 1 and 2. We're getting filled up here. And the last thing that I'm gonna add in is gonna be 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Before I do that, this food processor has this little area here. I'm gonna put the cinnamon in after because this is already kind of full. I'm gonna put this on, lock it into place, and we're gonna let the internet magic go, and I'll show you when I'm putting in the cinnamon too. So, adding the 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. It's still going around. 1 and 2. Now it's ready. It's a nice paste. It takes a while to get there, and you might have to cut up some of the butter chunks a little bit. Be careful, because these blades in food processors are no joke. They're scary things. Anyway, it becomes a paste, and I'm gonna set this aside and get it ready for when we roll out our dough and do the magic of folding the squares.